This is evidence-based religion part 2. Now, in this part, I'm basically going to focus on a peculiar phenomenon that I see in Malaysia right now, which is the combination of the Dravidian identity with crypto missionaries, right? And before I start, I'm going to do a bit of fault finding here. Now, I think the mere fact that these people have appeared in Malaysia is really the fault of modern Hindu parents, because Hinduism is a non-proselytizing religion. So young Hindus don't know how to handle hostile missionaries. As Hindus, we learn the religion for ourselves. We are not taught to defend Hinduism, right? So the old-fashioned way of teaching Hinduism is quite outdated. Uh, for example, when I was a little girl, we started learning Tamil at about the age maybe 5 or 6, and we straight go on to Hindu Dharma, the theology part where we will learn things like Atichudi, Aram Saya Virumbu and things like that. Then we'll go on to the Tirukkural, which are all dharmic texts. And then, grandma will tell us a little bit about Ramayana, Mahabharata, and when you're old enough, your parents will hand you the Bhagavad Gita and, ask you to read a verse a day, things like that. And along the way, a grandma will teach you the sampradaya that you belong to. Like I'm a Shaivite, so my grandmother used to teach me Shaivite rituals. Okay. Now, the problem is if you don't teach young Hindus to defend Hinduism, they will be made to feel ashamed of Hinduism and to disbelieve and to become converted to other religions. So we need to teach young Hindus fact-based secular history of Hinduism. That's the only protection that they have. Why? Because young Hindus cannot defend the scientific parts of Hinduism, right? Now, if you ask a young Hindu very often, they cannot tell you why Puranas and Itihasas have these scary, dramatic plot lines. They cannot tell you why ancient Hindu temples have all the sexy carvings on the Gopuram. They will not be able to explain to you why Shankara asked an untouchable to move away. Who's an untouchable? Things like that. Now, before I start, a very strong disclaimer, right? Now, when it comes to the Dravidian ideology, everything I've taken is from what is publicly available historical records, and it does not refer to any living person or any current religious institution. Okay, it refers to something that is historical. Now, the problem with trying to authenticate historical archaeological records is that it's not the same as trying to authenticate a pure science research, right? It's not the same as trying to evaluate a randomized control trial. So I've tried my best, but if you feel that some of the records I've presented are not authentic, please let me know. And even better, if you could give me the authentic reference. Thank you for that. Now, I have zero issues or problems with genuine missionaries, right? They will state their real religion, they will spot their own religious symbols, and they seek to convert using persuasion. And my response to all missionaries is evidence-based religious history. Usually that takes care of the problem, right? Now, I've got no issues with the Dravidian separatists. Now, this was a separatist group which made use of the Dravidian ideology to ask for a separate Tamil state. And there are reports that they used to insult Hinduism. Now, I've got no issues with them because I'm not an Indian citizen. And even though they have insulted Hinduism or they may have insulted Hinduism, they are at least open about who they are. My specific problem is with the Dravidian crypto missionaries. These are people who pretend to be Hindus. They spot Hindu religious symbols like Pottu, Vibhuti, etc. And they seek to convert using deceit, right? They use a 6-step method. This is what I've broken it down to. And my response is to expose these culprits. Now, some definitions first. Now, the word Dravidam has got a few meanings, but the generally accepted meaning is southern land. It's a geographical description, right? Now, sometime in the 1880s, the Christian church apparently in India decided that they need to create a Dravidian identity, so that was the best way to convert Tamils who are Hindus, right? Now, this is described in a book known as Religion and Modernity India by Oxford Academic Press. If you go to chapter 3, there's a chapter written by Will Sweetman from Otago University. It gives you the storyline and the references in the Dravidian idea in missionary accounts of South Indian religion, right? So what is their six-step method? So they first create a narrative that Tamils were brutally chased away from North India by Aryan invaders. So they create grievances. Next, they say that the Tamil identity and religion is separate from North India. So they created Dravidianism. Not enough, they say that even though they got chased down to the south, the bad Aryans pursued them and continued to oppress them in the south via their agents, the Brahmins. And how did they do it? Is by using the Vedas, which created the caste system. Okay. And they will also very vaguely make some claim that the Tamil Dravidian religion is inspired by Christianity. So that's indigenization. And then sometimes the process of conversion doesn't occur over one generation, but it occurs maybe over two generations where they slowly sweet talk you into attending their classes and things like that. So basically, it's uh, Tamil versus Brahmin, Tamil versus Sanskrit, Saiva Siddhantam versus a Vedic religion, and ancestor worship versus Vedic gods like what they call as Vedic gods like Vishnu and Rama. Now, why did the missionaries hate the Brahmins? Brahmins mean Panchadi and Brahmana. Brahmana is a varna, it's a job. Okay. Uh, Now, I cannot find the original reference for this, but looking through various texts, and I don't think a narrative is being created here, was that they found it very difficult. The Christian missionaries found it very difficult to convert the Brahmins, and the Brahmins in turn, uh, what do you call it, ensured that the non-Brahmins, Tamils also didn't get converted. So they had to get rid of the Brahmins first. So the best way to do it was uh, they can't be anti-Hindu because that will antagonize the Hindu population. So they became anti-Brahmin. So being anti-Brahmin is a surrogate marker for anti-Hinduism. And anti-Brahminism, that means the Vedic religion, is a surrogate marker for anti-Hinduism. So please make sure that your children are alert to this, right? So my favorite meme is Melecha spotted. Melecha is a non-Hindu, non-Vedic person, right? What they will do is they will create a narrative that the Tamils were chased away from the north and came crying bitterly to the south, so that there is a sense of grievance. So before the Aryan came, the Tamils occupied the entire India, and after the Aryans came, they were pushed down south. Now, how were they able to create this sort of narrative? First, they created the Aryan invasion theory, where apparently some sort of civilized Western European Aryan invaded India and carrying and bringing Sanskrit and the Vedas with them to India. So this theory was popularized by Max Muller, who was a German British linguist, and he was not known to have ever visited India. So basically, from central London, he decided that India was invaded by Aryans. Uh, but unfortunately for that theory, in the 1920s, they actually excavated the Indus Valley civilization site, which showed that the original settlers had a very, what shall I say, civilized way of life with houses and roads and things like that, and there was no sign of invasion. So this Aryan invasion theory was quietly dropped by serious academia, but it still carried on in the media. It was very popular, right, for some reason. Now, then to continue with the Aryan Dravidian divide, they had to come up with another theory. So now they come up with another theory, but this time it doesn't appear to be a Western civilization, but Central Asians. Central Asian European or European steppe or whatever. So there was a large scale migration into India, which pushed the poor Tamils down to the south. And these people also apparently brought the Sanskrit and Vedas with them. Now, this carried on until the early part of the 21st century and sort of died a quiet death with the arrival of uh, specialities such as archaeogenetics and archaeolinguistics. Now, just like any branch of medicine, studying archaeogenetics is a very complicated affair, right? Because everyone does small studies just for the sake of publishing something, right? And trying to put these studies together into a systematic review or meta-analysis is very complicated, right? Because everybody uses different each person will use a different terminology. They will use a different scientific platform, different scientific tests. They may use different software, different assumptions, things like that. So things sort of improved between the year 2005 and 2019 when IBM and National Geographic started the Genographic project. Okay, I've given you the site there where you can go and get it. It sparked the out of Africa, out of India theory. So basically, they use recombinant analysis to show the pathway of evolution, how populations migrated, right? So in this theory, all of us come from Africa, and a part of us went through Saudi Arabia into what is known as modern day Iran. Okay, we all went to Iran. We did not land in Chennai in front of the sari shops. We all went to Iran first. Now, from Iran, there were three uh, distinct waves of people who came into India. The first wave was known as the hunter-gatherers. They arrived in India about 50,000 years ago, and they became isolated for the next 50,000 years. They did not have any more contact with the Iranians and things like that. Okay, they were cut off. So these are known as the Andamanis. Now, of course, in real life now we don't have this population, so they're sometimes called as a ghost population. Then, about 10,000 years ago or 12,000 years ago, a second wave came out of Iran. Okay, this is known as the Iranic wave. And these people, after a few thousand years, they started doing agriculture in the Indus Valley and started marrying the first wave, that is the hunter-gatherers. So the marriage of the first and second wave together produced the Indus Valley civilization. Now, almost every living ethnic Indian is majorly or largely made up of this Indus Valley population, right, which is a combination of the first and second wave. Now, very recently, maybe about 2 or 3,000 years ago, uh, another wave, a smaller wave of people came down from uh, the steppe region, or what you would call the Caucasus region, right? And they also intermingled with us. So today, almost every surviving Indian is a mixture of three waves. One is the original hunter-gatherer wave. The second is the agricultural and crop planter wave. And the third is the steppe pastoralist wave. So whether you're a North Indian or South Indian, you have all these three components. It's just that if you go south, the more south you go, you are more of the hunter-gatherer gene, and the more north you go, you are more of the steppe pastoralist gene, right? But other than that, there is no difference. All Indians are just homogeneous in terms of composition, but not in terms of proportion. So that is as far as population genetics goes. Now, more recently, last year, there was a paper published. It is a archaeo linguistics paper. Now, I cannot peer review that kind of paper because that's not my area of competence, but I can just quote their discussion and conclusion to you. So basically, they say that uh, the West got their language from the Southern Caucasus. That means the West, as we know it, the Germans and things like that, got their language from somewhere very close to that big, huge original Iranic Indus Valley civilization population, right? So with that, I think we can put the Aryan invasion theory, Aryan migration theory, and whatnot to rest. Now, another thing that we have to highlight is that you see, very often we are asked, okay, why do Tamil Brahmins have slightly more of the Aryan gene compared to the non-Brahmins? Okay, so my answer to that is, have you checked all non-Brahmins? Has there been a comprehensive study done in Tamil Nadu to show the proportion of Aryan and Dravidian genes among the population? Number one, it looks like the Tamil Brahmins might have slightly more of the step gene in them compared to the non-Brahmin Tamils, but they have less step genes in them compared to the non-Tamil non-Brahmins. Okay, so this step gene is not uh, a marker of Brahminism or things like that. There are South Indian Brahmins who have got very little of the step gene, right? And from a scientific perspective, when you see a population which the components are the same, but the proportions are different, right? Then you have to ask questions like, is this the effect of isolation, okay, random mutations? Is it the effect of endogamy or founder effect or bottleneck effect? These are all genetic phenomena, right? Rather than jumping and saying that, the Brahmins are not Tamils. And the other thing that we have to put to rest is the fact that in the ancient Tamil literature, there is no historical grievance against the so-called Aryans or the Brahmins, right? Because when you look at older texts, I've just picked up things that are familiar to me, and I'm, basically just Googling to find out things that I've forgotten. If you look at the Tolkappiyam, which is one of the earliest Tamil texts, which has got portions of the Agatyam in it, it does mention Varuna, who is a Vedic god of nature. Okay, if you look at the Tirukkural from around the same period, it mentions Indra by name. If you look at the Purananuru 3, verse 362, it mentions the Vedas, Nanmarai, and mentions Papan. Papan are Brahmins because they used to look into the future, astrologers. And if you look at Agananuru verse 70, it talks of Rama and Dhanuskodi. Apparently Rama was sitting in Dhanuskodi and thinking before he went to Sri Lanka. And if you look at the Silapadigaram, it mentions Indra, Vishnu, Rama. And Sanskrit was never a written language. It doesn't even have a script. But the first times, some of the first people to write down Sanskrit were the Tamils. You can see the Tamil Nadu government gazette where they show pictures of Sanskrit written in the Pallava Grantha. And if you look at the Tirumandiram, which was sort of dated to the 6th century, in chapter 2 it's Veda Sirappu, chapter 3 is Agama Sirappu, right? And if you look at the 12th century Kamba Ramayanam, which is translated from Sanskrit, there is no record of Kambar being a Brahmin. Apparently, he was something from a caste known as Ojan. That means, people who sing in temples. So you can see that there is no historical grievances that Tamil people have against any other race in India. Now, the next is the indigenization of foreign religions. Here is something that I just picked off the internet. Somebody has written a book saying that the Hindu religion is an offshoot of Saint Thomas Dravidian Christianity. Now they've got Dravidian Hinduism and Dravidian Christianity. And this person seems to be saying that Tiruvalluvar is a Christian and Kabaliswarar temple is a Christian temple. Okay, so I leave that to you. Now, let's say you push back on all these things. Next, they will pull out the caste oppression card. Okay, apparently the Aryan Brahmins oppressed the Dravidian Brahmins because they considered them low caste. So what did they say? The Brahmins did not allow the non-Brahmins to be educated prior to the British arriving and saving all the non-Brahmins. The Vedas themselves promote caste oppression. Then they pull out stuff like Nandana, Ekalavya, and Mahabharata and Ramayana, which is not the Vedas. And then they will say things like Vedic Hinduism promote sex, rape, incest, bestiality, and the Vedas encourage sati, okay, self-immolation. Now let's look at those charges one by one. Now the first thing I'm going to put up here is the Parochial Schools Bill, the House of Commons in the UK in 1807. Now, I've taken this directly from the British Parliamentary Hansard, so there can be no question that this is indeed true. Now, when the British elites and nobles were debating education for the poor Englishmen, right? Someone like Davis Giddy, they don't, without feeling any sense of embarrassment, I suppose, in 1807 said that giving education to the laboring classes of the poor would be prejudicial to their morals and happiness. It would teach them to despise their lot in life instead of making them good servants in agriculture and other laborious employment. Right? So the British never even, the elite British never even wanted their own poor people to be educated. They had their own caste system going on there, right? And the Dravidian crypto missionaries want to claim that the British were the one who liberated the non-Brahmins in Tamil Nadu by giving them education, right? So this is the kind of preposterous claims that they will make. Now let's look at uh, the literature on this issue. Now there is something known as the Dharampal collected writings in volume 3, the beautiful 3, the indigenous Indian education system in the 18th century. Now the British introduced their useless education system in 1835. But before that, what were the Tamilians doing with themselves when they were left alone? 70 to 80% of students in certain districts in Tamil Nadu schools, the indigenous Tamil schools, were Shudras and other even lower caste, whatever that means. Okay, they were not the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, or the Vaishyas. And if you read the entire document, you will realize that they had a very in-depth and egalitarian education, right? Uh, so this claim that the non-Brahmins were bullied by the Brahmins is it doesn't find any support in the literature. The next is that the Vedas perpetuate the caste system via the Varna system. Okay, now nobody knows what is the caste system. No Hindu knows what the caste system is because it's not mentioned in our scriptures. What we have are three very distinct systems which have been meshed together by the British, I suppose, just to make things easier for themselves. Now, first we have the Kula. Kula is a biological system. It is your cousins, your aunties, your uncles, your extended family. They are biologically related to you, regardless of what job they do. Then you have got the purely theological system of the Varna that comes from the Vedas, right? It's known as the Hindu code of professional conduct. So if you decide to do a particular job, right? Now, first, in order to be able to do that job, to be eligible to do that job, you must have the guna, that means the effort and the aptitude to do that job. Next, you must have uh, also karma. Okay, now where does this karma come in? Like certain jobs for safety reasons have certain requirements. Like if you want to be a pilot, you have to be a certain height. For example, 5'6". Now, if you're only 5'2" but hardworking, you cannot be a pilot because you will be a danger to others, the passengers sitting behind you. Okay, so that is why in the Hindu scheme of things, yes, you can work very hard, but if for some reason something about you which is which you cannot change, things that you cannot change, but pose a safety risk to others, that is regarded as karma. That means it's not your lot to do that particular job, right? Because the safety of others is far more important than what you want to do. So the four Chaturvarna are the Brahmana, who are the intellectuals, the Kshatriyas, who are the warriors, the Vaishyas, who are the producers of goods and services, and the Shudras, who are the skilled workers, who produce whatever is necessary for the other three to carry on their jobs. Next, you have got the Avarna. Avarna are basically people who have got no job specialization. They're basically the tribal. That means they all sleep in a cave. They get up in the morning, they'll pluck some fruit and eat. They'll go to the river, drink some water, have a bath, and go back and sleep in the cave. Okay, so nobody has to do a specialized job. Then the last is the Chandala, the untouchable. Now, the Chandala is the precursor to the modern industrial zoning laws. All right. Now, who were the Chandalas? The Chandalas were basically those who dealt with dead flesh. Okay, whether you're dealing with a corpse, or you're a butcher, or you're a leather worker like Nandana, you come under this category. Now, why did they have this special category? We have to accept the fact that ancient Indians were quite scientifically advanced and they would know that this kind of jobs also have got the propensity to spread infections. All right. So they were kept isolated. They were not abused or they were not ill treated. They were just kept isolated. You choose to do that job, you stay in the industrial zone, right? So that is why we have the story of Shankaracharya when he was walking and a Chandala comes in front of him. He tells the Chandala, move, because you're worried that he might carry some infection with him, right? And then the Chandala says, what do you want me to move, my Atma or my body, right? So that was, what do you call it, a scenario that everybody should read about. Next is the corpus of the entire corpus of Hindu scriptures are there to teach us Dharma. Okay, that is their almost their only one and only purpose, and they teach it through scenario-based learning. Like I can still remember Ekalavy's story because there was a scene where Ekalavya wants to be an archer. He learns silently from Dronacharya. When Dronacharya comes to know about it, he tells him that he must give his thumb as Guru Dakshina. So I remember that story. And what is the main principle? That knowledge is priceless. You know, there's a price to be paid to gain knowledge. And the learning objective was the applied dharma. Okay, not just the dharmic principle, but the applied dharma. So here you learn that yes, Guru Dakshina must be given. But a great teacher can also have bad intentions towards you. He may have greater good intentions for another reason. But to you, he may have bad intentions, right? In order to serve some greater good, you can become a victim. So these are all important ways of teaching young people without being boring. So things stick in your head. So that is why we have all these Puranic stories and Mahabharata and all, which have got very scary and sometimes it looks very discriminatory, but they all have a specific meaning. And then you have got to tell them that why we teach certain scary things in the Puranas. We have to teach children about sex, incest, rape, bestiality, and things like that because they are young, they are innocent. The only way they can protect themselves is by knowing about these things so that they can spot a predator or a dangerous situation the moment they see it. Otherwise, they will get caught in the situation and they won't know how to come out of it. They are small children, right? And why do we have all the sex carvings in the temples? Because in those days, because of their shorter lifespan, young boys and young girls got married, right? So who's going to teach them about sex? So the temple, which is the main community centers, took on that job. Now, one of the claims that they make is that the Vedas promote sati. So the verse that they will quote is the one known as the funeral hymn, uh, Rig Veda 10, right? Now, the problem with the Vedas is they were transmitted in Sanskrit, and Sanskrit was purposely kept without a script because the Vedas were never meant to be written down because you do not want people who don't understand Sanskrit, the Vedangas, to start reading it and misinterpret it. You go and learn it formally with a guru, right? So apparently the word agre, which was beginning, that means after your husband dies, yes, you are miserable and all, but you still have to have a new beginning, was written down as agne, fire. So that they interpreted that you're supposed to jump into the fire. Now I looked at I'm not a Sanskrit expert. I do not even know how to read or write Sanskrit, but I looked at those words and actually it is a very tiny dot in that a word which makes a difference. So I think it's either a typographical error and less likely to be a deliberate error, right? And of course, it was later noted and corrected. So now all the references have got the correct interpretation. Other than that, you also have to look at what did people actually do during that time. Were they confused about it, or did they misread it? So when you look at the literature of sati, you find that it's actually a very rare thing. Some queens did it when their dear husbands passed away. Maybe they didn't want to be ill-treated by the next king or something like that. Okay, but it's a very rare event. It is not something that all believing Hindus did. Now, what was common was Jawahar, which is also sometimes confused with Sati purposely, which was common after the 12th century with the Mughal invasion, because the Mughals used to rape women. It was a weapon of war for them, right? So then it became, if the Hindu king lost, then all the Hindu queens will commit Jawahar so that they don't get raped. So that was a different phenomenon entirely, and that probably contributed to the numbers from the 12th century onwards. Now, if all else fails, as a parting shot, the cryptos will pull out the language card. Okay, they will say that there is no Tamil record of Sanatana Dharma, right? So, for that, I always tell them that Hinduism is an exonym. It's a name given to us by others. Whereas Sanatana Dharma is an endonym. It's a name that we chose for ourselves. Now, why do we want to have one name? Because throughout India, we are all Hindus. Now, if I were to describe Hinduism, name Hinduism in Tamil, then I'll have to say, that's another name. Then if someone Bengali person wants to think, that will be in Bengali. So it's going to confuse non-Hindus, non-Indians who think that Indians have got thousands of religions, when it is not true. We have got one theological religion, which is Dharma or Sanatana Dharma or Hindu Dharma or Veda Dharma, whatever you want to call it. And we have got multiple ritualistic sampradaya like Vaishnava, Shaiva, whatever you want to call it. All right. And this Dharma is mentioned in ancient Tamil texts like the Tirukkural. Dharma is Aram in Tamil, right? So Dharma was always a part of Tamil Hindu life. Now, the other thing that they will seek to confuse you is the word Brahm, the root word Brahm. Now, there are many distinct words with this root word. One is Brahman or Brahmam, which is the Supreme Almighty. The other one is Brahma, the God of creation, the Brahma, Vishnu, Saraswati. Then you've got something known as Brahmana. Okay, Hindus, when we say Brahmana, we mean the Varna, the job. The Brahmanas are the job that what the Brahmana did, which is the ritualistic part of the Vedas. Now, Brahmin is a jadi or kula. They include people like Ayers, Iyengars, things, jadis like that. But they're not homogeneous. Okay, North Indian Brahmins are different, South Indian are different. They're not homogeneous. So the argument that they will make is the Brahmins have monopolized the temples. That means only Brahmins are allowed to, the Brahmins claim only they are allowed to be priests in temples. Now let's look at that. Okay. Now, if the temple is built by a king, the king decides who becomes the hereditary priest of that temple, and the king leaves behind financial grants for their salaries in perpetuity. So either until the grant runs out or the hereditary priest, their children don't want to be priests, the public cannot interfere. Okay, because the king built it, it is his wish. It is his temple, it is his wish who he wants to put there. A good example is the Chidambaram temple, Nadaraja temple. Okay, the other one is something that you do a GoFundMe and build a temple by public funds. Now, there anyone can be a priest as long as you are trained, right? There's no restriction. Or you can build your own temple and you can make yourself the priest. There is no restriction. Okay. And after some time, people will call you a pujari, ayyare, pandaram, whatever. Then you have got different kinds of Hindu temples. You've got the agamic versus the non-agamic. Okay, the agamic temples are those built to specific specifications. Okay, and with specific rituals and all that. The non-agamic temples are more of the village kind of temples where you can put any either deity you want, do whatever prayers you want. So it's up to you. Hinduism is a very liberal religion in the sense that how you want to reach out to God is entirely up to you. The only thing that the Hindu is obliged to follow is Dharma. Other than that, nothing much, right? How you talk to God is entirely up to you. Right. So, as I said, I've tried my best to make sure that the supporting evidence is both authenticated and original. But you can't do it all the time because the social sciences are just that way. So if there are any errors, please let me know, and even better, please give me the link to the original, authentic, uh, what shall I say, reference, or if you have something refuting it, please let me know as well, and I'll place a correction in the comment section. Thank you very much.